All right, now that we have a couple people on, I think I'm gonna get started here. It's lovely to see some familiar names. It's also very nice to be back at Vogue. So, hello, welcome, happy holidays. I hope you are all surviving the big crazy rush as we move into a very busy season for many people. We are Flying Fibers. My name is Irina Lawrence Matthias, and I am co-owner and second shepherdess in command of Flying Fibers. Together, I work with my mom, Jerry Robinson Lawrence, and we are based in York County, Pennsylvania, specifically Wrightsville area. And Audrey, I said, just because you just hopped on, I said I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm just going to do a little presentation and then I'll show you some samples at the end, depending on how much time we have. But I do have the chat open. So if anybody has any questions, you can feel free just to bother me. Alrighty. So, who is Flying Fibers? We are a wool and lavender farm based out of York County, Pennsylvania. We are a mother-daughter team. So, my mom, Jerry, as I mentioned before, she currently has another obligation today, so it's just me. But we are co-owners together. She does a lot of the behind the scenes creative side of it. So, she is the one that is in charge of creating all of the dye recipes. Mostly, she's the one that dyes all of the yarn just because I do have a 3-year-old daughter who can get a little bit, she wants to be very helpful and it's not safe in a dye studio. And so my mom does all of that, and she is the one that had the initial passion back in 2001 to start bringing in British wools and raising sheep. Um, and I am the customer facing side of it, and I do all of our social media marketing and all of our in-person things like that. So we do have 35 sheep, rare breed sheep on our farm. We raise North American Wensleydale sheep, we raise Shetland sheep, and Leicester Longwool sheep. All three of those breeds are similar in ways, but very different in others. And it is a really beautiful thing for a wool and yarn farm to be able to have those capabilities. We also farm 400 plus lavender plants. We obviously didn't have enough on our plate with everything going on, so we decided in 2021 we started with 150 plants, and over the years it has just grown and expanded. And now at our retail shop, which I'll talk about in a second, we have about 200 plants right in front of where people park. And then we have another 200, 250 planted in a field for you pick, which is a wonderful summer thing that you can come to the shop and do. You pick lavender. So we do have a retail shop. We just celebrated 15 years in business. We were in Lancaster County from 2009 until 2021. And then we had decided to combine the sheep and the shop because we were just in like an old State Farm office. And it was lovely for the time we were there, but we quickly outgrew it for what we wanted to do with our business and the operations that we were running. So we were there for like 12 years, and we are almost coming up on 3 years here in this location. We built this beautiful retail shop you see down here in the bottom left corner. It is small but mighty. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it is right next to the sheep pastures. So you get the sheep and the shop all in one location, which is so fun. But yeah, 15 years in business. It's been a lovely, crazy, wild ride. We also have been doing the Fiber Festival circuit since 2001. So we have been vending and we've been importing wools and we've just been doing it all for such a long time. And it's something we really love so much. So we've got our retail shop in the bottom left. In the center here is a shot of above our parking area, the lavender right before it started to open, looking into the corner of the shop. And then also we have a outdoor patio in the front of the store and then a back outdoor picnic area to the, at the back in the side of the store. So it's looking out into those areas there. And down here is a photo of my daughter helping feed the sheep. That was probably a year ago, or more. And so it's just such a fun, lovely thing to do. So what makes us special? We have a fun story. We got into the British wool thing because my dad was born and raised in Yorkshire, England, and when my mom went to visit him when they were dating back in the 80s, she fell in love with the sheep and she fell in love with the wool, and she wanted to be able to do it here in the United States. And my parents did eventually settle down in the US, in the Lancaster, Philadelphia area, and for jobs and whatnot. And so my mom was like, yeah, we have to definitely bring this beautiful British wool to a larger consumer. Because at the time it was not as common, obviously. She quickly realized you could not just put a sheep on a plane. And so we had to find other ways to get around that. So we are still a small two-person team. It started with just my mom doing it. And then I started helping when I was a kid. And now I've taken over a lot of the responsibilities, with my mom's passion still helping fuel us all, and also plus the toddler. We create yarns from our own flock, as well as having commercial yarns that we custom import the wool, have it spun for us, and then hand dye it here on the farm. We focus on rare breed wools and long wool fibers, which is something that you don't often find in the commercial hand knitting market. Most often, you're looking at superwash merinos, alpacas, cashmere, just all of these really soft, really fluffy, beautiful fibers. But we also want to be able to preserve the sheep that offer up their beautiful fleeces, for things that are more better suited for, hefty wool sweaters, fingerless mittens that you can really beat up, stuff that you're going to use and use and use time and time again. Um, you know, and because of my mom's beautiful eye for color, we also offer up rich color palettes that create beautifully cohesive knitting projects when you utilize them together. I love this photo down at the bottom of the screen. It is two shades of our natural flock yarns on either side, and then three very autumnal colors um, in the center there of our Yorkshire medley. So let's talk yarn. I said that we have 35 sheep. Sounds like a lot, but it's not. So we have our commercial lines that we custom manufacture. So this was our first one. This was our initial brainchild when we were like, how do we want to bring long wool fibers to the greater hand knitting market? So this is Yorkshire Medley. We released it in 2016, so it is almost 10 years old now, which is crazy to think. Released in 2016 at Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. It is a true DK weight, coming in at 262 yards to the 100-gram skein, and it is a beautiful blend of Wensleydale and blue-faced Leicester. I love to call this our long wool leap yarn because if somebody is not ready or not sure if they really want to knit with 100% long wools like pure Wensleydale or pure Leicester long wool or Lincoln or, Cotswold, this is a very good yarn to give it a go. The Wensleydale gives it its sheen, its drape, its durability, but the blue-faced Leicester, while it's also a British long wool sheep, it is on the softer side. So it tends to be, it gives it a loft and softness that you don't often get with just regular 100% long wools, and you still get that beautiful halo. So when we released this, we rolled up to Maryland Sheep and Wool. We had other things in our booth, but we rolled up in Maryland Sheep and Wool with these four stunning colors that look gorgeous together. In the bottom left-hand corner, we had our elderflower, which was the natural, more shrub, which is that dynamic green, Whitby shale, which is that blue, and then elderberry jam, which is that gorgeous berry on the corner. And we were like, look at this big, beautiful yarn line that we were making. Because at the time, we had like just had 500 pounds of wool spun. So it felt like a lot for us, because we had only been working with like 10-pound batches previously. So it was like quite a big thing. And people loved it. They loved that it was different. They loved that it was soft. They loved that it was kettle dyed by my mom and I. So there was a depth of shades to the colors and stuff. And we were like, this is really fun. We have to keep going. So next up is Seadale. Seadale is another little brainchild that is so fun. So we released this one in 2021 at New York State Sheep and Wool Festival. There was a fairly large gap between Yorkshire Medley and Seadale. It is a true worsted weight. It's 198 yards to the 100-gram skein, and it is a Wensleydale and Manx Lockton blend. When we were looking to create something different and new and add to our yarn lines, we didn't know if we wanted to stick with the Wensleydale BFL, or because the, Yorkshire Medley, even though it's a true DK weight, it's kind of on the loftier side, so you could get away like knitting it on like a 7 and 8 needle. So we were like, let's try something different. Manx Lockton is a primitive breed from the Isle of Man. Manx Lockton itself means mousy brown, and so it's really fun. It's kind of short, it's kind of soft. It's a really cool fiber, but when you blend it just right at the perfect ratios, you get a gorgeous combination with Wensleydale. So the cool thing about when we make our yarns is we actually hand blend everything in small samples and hand spin it to see, do we want it to be 3-ply? Do we want it to be 2-ply? Do we want a higher twist, lower twist? What ratios of wool, of breeds do we want? And so because the Manx Lockton sheep are naturally only Morit, they don't come in any other colors. The Cuppa is our natural that you can see in the color swatches there. And it is like it's the color of a perfect cup of tea. And so the brown within the white Wensleydale just creates that really beautiful color. And then also it allows itself, once we then over dye with the colors, it gives that really beautiful heathered look to our kettle dyed yarns as well. So the Seedale is a really fun, really beautiful yarn. And it is definitely a little bit, I think it feels a bit more rustic than our Yorkshire Medley. So if you wanted to try something that is really out of your wheelhouse, you might, want to consider giving Seedale a go. Yorkshire Medley Light is, we released this. We had this manufactured at the end of 2019 is how I should preface it. And we had a big grand plan to release it 4 years after Yorkshire Medley at Maryland Sheep and Wool, just like we had done a fingering weight, add it to, start, yeah, whole big thing. And then obviously like the world shut down and we had the pandemic as a lockdown. So we stuck to it. We didn't release it early on in the pandemic. We were like, let's just release it because Maryland was having a virtual festival. Let's just release it when we thought we were going to. Might not quite be the same, but alas. And so we released it in 2020 at Virtual Maryland Sheep and Wool. It is a 4-ply fingering weight, and there's 202 yards to the 50-gram skein. It is the same beautiful blend of Wensleydale and Blue-Faced Leicester that our Yorkshire Medley yarn is, but we do have a more limited color palette in here. So we're only, instead of like with our Yorkshire Medley DK weight where we have 15 dyed colors in a natural, we only have 8 colors total, so 7 and natural. But we do have a good depths range of colors in our Yorkshire Medley Light. It looks beautifully done up in color work, but it still has that nice round 3-ply construction that it absolutely shines in cables. And then moving on to the stuff that is like super fun is our flock yarns. The cool thing about our flock yarn is we do it on a small scale that it gives a really big personalization aspect to everything. So we keep them incredibly small batch. Sometimes batches are, 3.5 pounds, like the true mill bare minimum. And sometimes they are a little bit bigger if we are able to buy in a couple fleeces from other farmers that look similar and, add it in to bolster it up. But really, nothing is ever more than 8 to 10 pounds. So you're looking at something so small batch. And for that reason, we like to keep them natural. So we do not dye our flock yarns. That's also in part why we decided to create our Yorkshire Medley and our Seedale yarn and our Yorkshire Medley Light, because we wanted to be able to offer up naturals and dyed colorways. So our DK weight flock yarns knit to the same gauge as our Yorkshire Medley, and our worsted weight flock yarns knit to the same gauge as our Seedale. So there's like a nice sort of back and forth there that you can utilize them together. But we do definitely keep breed specific together. So all the Shetland stays with the Shetland, but we also like to keep the color, so fleece specific pairings. So sometimes some of our yarns will only have, it'll be like one sheep is what made that yarn, or it'll be like 2. Mother and daughter usually tend to have the similar fleeces. Like we have our Dot and Hilda is one, and it's mother and daughter, and their fleece has always been similar since the time Hilda was born, so we just group them together. These do have a larger range because they are small batch. We get to play a little bit more because we're not pushing through, almost 1,000 pounds of wool through a spinner. So they range from sport weight up to worsted weight. Sometimes, as like I previously mentioned, we do bring in other fleeces from farmers. We have our Friends of the Flock series, which is where we will buy in wool from other farmers that might only have 2 or 3 sheep, and we then have it spun into these beautiful small batch yarns. We personally raise the Shetland, the North American Wensleydale, and the Leicester Longwool, but we have bought in Romney fleeces, Blue-faced Leicester fleeces, alpaca fleeces, and all of these are good for varying purposes just because of the different wool types. So it's a lot of fun to be able to do that. We also are we're happy that we're able to do collaborations. So we have collaborated with independent knitwear designers with our yarns. We've worked with like Rachel Brockman, who's done a lot of designs for us, but her sweater, the Sotara, the colorwork one here in the bottom, was designed for our 10-year shop anniversary, and it was designed and knit in our Yorkshire Medley yarn. We've also worked with Annie Rowden, who is originally from the UK, but she now lives in Vermont. She's a farmer, and she designed this Bahal shawl, which is really beautiful and takes 4 skeins of our Yorkshire Medley yarn. Frankie Hughes is a British-based knitwear designer. She also worked for John Arbon Textiles for a little bit, and she designed this muscle cardigan in our Yorkshire Medley. It was Mussel, like the sea creature. We also then have worked with Mona Zilla, and she has designed these beautiful Veronica mitts. They are colorwork mittens. They are designed in our Yorkshire Medley yarns, and they are just a really fun treat to be able to knit. We have also been able to do collaborations with magazines like Lina Magazine and the Knitter Magazine based out of England. Lina Magazine, we were able to have the Solitaire sweater, which was designed by our friend Rachel Brockman, and knit and designed in our Seedale yarn. It's a beautiful sweater, but it was published in the magazine in the original yarn that the swatch was in, and so our yarn got featured in there, and we were so, so honored. We also have worked with the Knitter Magazine on a couple things, and so they loved that we did our Yorkshire Medley yarn and that we brought the wool in from England and then had it spun here. So they did like a whole little write-up about us, which was super cool. And we've also done collaborations with yarn companies like Brooklyn Tweed. We are a full service yarn shop. And so we have carried Brooklyn Tweed yarns since 2017. And we had this idea for our 15th year anniversary to be able to do a sort of collaboration with them because we love preserving the wool market. Brooklyn Tweed loves preserving the wool market. And, they don't get a lot of hand dyed indie dyer because they work on such a large scale comparatively. So we utilized their base and we dyed them up in these 5 beautiful colors, and it's all limited batch, limited edition, small batch. So we have wineberries on the left. The yellow is called Nankin, the kind of rare breed bantam chickens that we raise on our farm. We have pasture pine is the green. Suskew View is the blue because we are right down the street from the Susquehanna River, and it is such a beautiful drive when you come to the shop to get there. And then, of course, we have lavender because you can't talk about flying fibers without talking about lavenders. So, and that's called our Forge yarn because the one, forging the friendships and the collaborations over the years, but also 2, Forge Hill is the address. Forge Hill Road is where the shop is. So it was like a nice sort of play on words there. So that collaboration just went live last week, and we are almost out of the yarn already. So if you see it on our website, grab it before it's gone, because once it's gone, it is gone. So, of course, you can find us on varying levels of social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We're on a whole bunch of different, I think we're still on Twitter, but we're on Threads for sure. And you can find us at Flying Fibers. You can also see us in person at the shop at Forge Hill Road in Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, or at different fiber festivals. We are vendors at New York State Sheep and Wool Festival, Shenandoah Valley Fiber Festival, Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival, and of course the virtual Knitting Live online festivals, and you can shop with us online at flyingfibers.com 24/7. Everything that we have is usually on the website, unless it's something like we just got it in and people are buying it out of the box. But otherwise, everything is pretty much on there. So, hello again. Does anybody have any questions? I know that was sort of fast and furious, but I am here to answer questions if you want. All right. If none of you have any questions, I want to thank you so very kindly for joining me today, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your holiday season. I have some very hungry sheep screaming at me from the pasture, so I'm going to go take care of them. And I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season, everyone. Thank you.